Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest and greatest episode of Failing Up. Today, I'm sitting down with John Gillen, the host of Milk Road Macro, as well as the founder of True Capital. In today's episode, we talk about the growing divisiveness in politics in the U.S., the importance of remaining objective, and as well as forgiveness in relationships and having a positive outlook on life. John is always incredible to talk to. As I've said before in the last episode, he's one of my favorite people to have on this podcast, and I hope you love this episode as much as I have. John.
Hello, Claire.
Let me put on my moisturizer. For context, not reference, I got a chemical peel, and although I believe I look like a lizard,
she does look like a lizard. You can see the resemblance, right?
Supposedly everyone else says I don't, but I'm just moisturizing just in case. So I would like to get into it right away.
Great.
You
talk about anything except your moisturizer, and I'd be happy with that.
You said that you believe there's a rumor being spread that Trump is looking to publicly potentially endorse Cuomo.
Oh, in the mayoral race for New York City?
Yes.
So I haven't looked into the specifics of this. This is a rumor. I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, but there's been some discussion that Trump might potentially throw his weight into the race to support Cuomo to stop Zohran Mamdani from securing the mayoral election in New York. Mm-hmm. I think that the politics of that are interesting because it makes strange bedfellows of people who would ordinarily be at diametrically opposed ends of the political spectrum. But Trump is a Queens native. He's a gangster from Queens at the end of the day. And Cuomo is a New Yorker. They've known each other for many, many years. And so I could see that being that could kind of make sense to sort of stop this rise of communism and extreme far left politics. But I don't think it's really going to happen.
Do you think Zohran is as dangerous as people claim to be?
Yeah, I think he is. Yes.
Why?
That's a big question. I think that gets to a lot of the fundamentals of what the foundations of the United States are built on and the values and political ideologies and just theories that our country and our civilizations, our systems are couched in versus Marxism. And I think that there's a lot of ways you can come at that. But the way I always try to explain this to people is that, so first of all, let's talk about some of the things Zohran Mamdani has said. He said that violence is a construct. He wants to increase taxes to, supplement gender-affirming care that Donald Trump is going to withdraw funding for. He wants to create a $100 million fund to pay for legal fees for illegal immigrants to stay in the country to counteract ICE removing them from our city. He wants to, what's the word? Take over, nationalize, whatever, the grocery system, freeze the rent, all these sorts of things.
Free rent.
Right, exactly. Well, it's not free,
Who
but
doesn't want free rent?
Okay, well, the consequences of that
he
are
wants to
what you don't
lower
want.
the World Cup ticket prices as well.
Sure. So there's a lot of things he says that he's going to help with. But this Marxist ideology, I think, is really toxic and it's bankrupt. It comes from, so first of all, Zohran Mamdani is a great avatar for Marxism in the modern age because Marx also never had a job and had everything he did was paid for by Friedrich Engels. And Karl Marx, I think, is an interesting character for a lot of reasons. The root of his ideas, I think, comes from a book, a play called Faust by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe wrote this play, Faust, and in the play of Faust, there's a character named Mephistopheles who says the phrase, "Everything that lives deserves to die." And Karl Marx had that was his favorite quote in all of literature. It was a popular play at the time, and it's a big feature in European history in terms of cultural impact. But he applied that to Hegelian dialectics. So Hegelian dialectics said that the only way to create new ideas is a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis. So there'd be a thesis, an assertion, an antithesis that destroys and negates it, and then there's a new formation that comes out of that. So Hegel took that as a philosophical concept and applied it to history. And then Karl Marx applied that to economic theory as well and said that the proletariat and the bourgeoisie are going to destroy each other. And out of that will come a new, this communist rebirth. But it's fundamentally tied back to this Mephistophelian or satanic idea that everything that lives deserves to die. And that is diametrically opposed to the Christian idea that is the foundation of Western civilization and American civilization, which is this idea of redemption. The Apostle Paul, his epistles to the church, the Pauline epistles, Pauline Christianity is what we now identify as modern Christianity, is fundamentally tied to this idea that a person or an institution or anything is worthy of redemption. As long as there's life, there is hope. Nothing should be condemned to die. And our system in America is based on the idea that, JFK said that those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution necessary. The point of our systems is that we can transfer power, we can change the systems without destroying each other, without having war, without having to completely dissolve these institutions and restart them. So I think that it gets the issue at stake here is not just one of who's going to control the prices in the grocery store. It's a much deeper spiritual battle between literally the forces of Satan and the Christian values of redemption, hope, love, and the idea that, so like Apostle Paul, his life as an example, he started out murdering Christians. And then he had this literal come to Jesus moment on the road to Damascus where he converted to Christianity. And the key thing about this, I think, is not Paul's conversion, but that the Christian church accepted him into their community. They believed in the power of God and redemption and the love of Christ so much that they believed it could change his life. And instead of saying, you've been killing our friends, you're not welcome, they accepted him. And that is the Christian and the American ideal. And this is what I'm so concerned about with the rise of communism and Zohran Mamdani.
Okay, but I have a question following up to that. Based on what you're saying, it sounds like all about love and acceptance, repenting, forgiveness. Why can't we do that? Like, why are we doing that with illegal immigration? Like, couldn't you argue that's the same thing? Or like, for example, the Fed. Why are we making it so it's no longer independent? And it seems like that's the impression I get. So couldn't you argue that both sides are kind of the same side of different sides of the same coin?
So I think that there's a lot of ways. So you raised two separate issues there. One is immigration policy and one is the independence of the Federal Reserve. I'll take those in two separate pieces. I think this is a very complicated issue, but I will say that in the United States prior to 1914, the relative policy that we had was that if you came to the United States and you just showed up here, you got to Ellis Island or Angel Island, you were kind of just like welcome in, naturalized, and you could get a job, you could have hope. This is the inscription on the Statue of Liberty: give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor, you're unwashed ashes, and I'll give them, welcome, right? Mm-hmm. That idea changed in 1914. I think that once you get to a place where you have a welfare state, which most of the American population is getting some sort of subsidy for their lives, their living expenses from the United States government, that changes the situation from a dynamic of immigration to one of invasion, because a lot of the things that people are entitled to when they come to America and become an American citizen are paid for by other American citizens. So there creates this sort of change in the dynamic there where when you have this, socialism is what we have. Socialism was defined by Marx and Engels as a series of steps that you take to convert a capitalist society into a communist one. So that's why I'm very wary of words like socialism, democratic socialism, because they're just communism under a different name. And they're very pernicious and dangerous for that reason. But once you start down that path, it creates this us versus them mentality. And it forces towards this class warfare and this destruction of everything. And that's one of the symptoms of that. The Federal Reserve is a different situation. So what we have with the Federal Reserve is really interesting. Prior to 1951, the Federal Reserve did not have the same power. So the history of central banking in the United States is a long thing that I could get into. But 1951 was when there was agreement made between the Treasury and the Federal Reserve that the Federal Reserve would be independent, so to speak, of the Treasury Department. And so that's where we are right now. That era of Fed independence goes back to that agreement in 1951. Prior to that, and so in that era, right, from 1951 forward, we've been in what we call monetary dominance, which is the Federal Reserve sets policy based on what they perceive to be the optimal monetary policy to ensure controlled inflation and high employment. So they make these changes based on monetary policy. However, now we've gotten to a place where the debt is so high, we have fiscal dominance. Fiscal dominance means you have to set monetary policy based on considerations of refinancing the debt. Prior to 1951, in the Second World War, we had an enormous amount of debt because we had to go into huge amounts of debts to fight that war. And that was the last time we had fiscal dominance. But once we had this huge boom of economic activity in the post-war era, in the Pax Americana, we were able to shift to this era of monetary dominance. So my view on this is that because we've now gotten back to a place of fiscal dominance is the reality, whether people want to admit it or not, Fed independence has always been sort of like an illusionary thing that's never been really true anyway. And it's really more of facing reality that we are not in an era of monetary dominance, but we are in an era of fiscal dominance. And we have to change how we think about policy for that reason. The Federal Reserve, as much as people like to say is independent, the chief function of the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve is to finance the operation of the United States government. They are bond salesmen at the end of the day. And if people don't want to buy our debt, they have to face that reality and adjust policy accordingly. So those are two separate issues, but that's how I think about those two things.
Okay, interesting. I literally learned so much from you every time I sit down with you. I love it. So
I'm glad to hear that. I'm jet lagged pretty badly, so I'm glad I'm still making coherent sentences.
So I do want to talk about a little bit about the political divisiveness in the U.S. I think we were talking about this on the phone earlier. You and I both sit on, I wouldn't say like exact opposites of the political spectrums, but we're definitely here and there. You know what I mean? And the data came out that 80% of U.S. adults say that Republicans and Democrats not only disagree on policy, but even basic facts. And I think with the Charlie Kirk situation, my mind was shocked at how people literally thought like alternate realities of what actually happened, who actually killed this person, what their motive was, and all those things. How do you see that playing out in the next couple of years? Like, do you actually think, because some people are like, this is the downfall of society. You said we're politically cooked. How do you see that playing out in the next couple of years? Like, how is this going to impact future elections? It's like people are in their own echo chambers. I still am shocked by all of it, to be honest.
I think that there's a lot of things in which you raised. The first thing I'll say is that I do agree that we are living in different realities because we get information from different sources. We are getting different realities, different spins. A lot of people on the left heard this story that the person who shot Charlie Kirk was a member of the far right, an extremist group, and I'm not going to name exactly because I don't want to talk about them specifically, but that is not the case. And I think
he did come from a Republican family, though.
He was very much a member of the left, and that is not really open for debate. So
I know.
He was born in Utah. His family's Republican. I understand the reason for the confusion, but the reason for the confusion is not based on facts. The reason for the confusion is because it's a political football that they want to fight over, both sides, right? So,
yes.
But this again, this shouldn't be controversial, Claire. The man had a Republican family, and he himself was of the left.
Agreed.
That's not controversial.
It's not controversial. I agree.
But the fact that people are fighting over this is because they want to have they have different sets of facts. They want a different version of reality. They want a different spin on these things.
May I?
Yeah, sure,
May I interject?
I was going to keep going. Go ahead.
I just want to say I think the important point is like it's always with people. It's like, how can I get my ball kicked to the goal of like being right? And I think the Democratic politician that was killed a couple months ago, along with her husband, I think it was the same situation but Uno reverse. And I think
I don't agree with that either. I don't agree. I think that person, was an appointee of Tim Walz. But look, I think we're fighting over anecdotal evidence of a larger problem. The real situation is both sides. The problem that we're in right now. Okay, so let's couch this in a more of a macro context. If you study or think about this idea of the fourth turning and these 80-year cycles and civilization rising and falling and stuff like that, you can see these patterns. And as you get to the end of a cycle of dominance for a civilization, you get what they call the fourth turning. In fourth turnings, it is quite common to see a lot of political unrest and extreme polarization and the killing of moderates, which, whether or not anybody wants to admit it, Charlie Kirk was a moderate. And people, exactly. See, that's people on the left say, how can that be true? He was what I would call close to being moderate. He was solidly conservative Republican, but as far as that goes, he was more towards a moderate, as many other people will go. I don't want to quibble about these things because I think the larger
we're not
point.
Quibbling. I'm just curious to understand. If you could give me like a little quick understanding on why Charlie Kirk was moderate. What made him moderate?
I think because he wasn't advocating extreme positions. He was willing to talk to the other side, which a lot of people are no longer interested in doing.
So that qualifies you as moderate?
I think it's a difference of perspective. I think that the radicalization that we've seen in the country has been much more of the left moving further left than the right moving further right. I think that the data shows that as well. But I think the issue is again, see, this is the whole problem is the left versus right? We have come to a place where the left is more viewing the right as the threat and the right is viewing the left as the threat. They're viewing each other as enemies. And it is a kind of like both sides have couched every election as an existential threat to the country. And both sides are doing this. And that's the key thing to understand. That is the problem, right? That we see each other as enemies rather than as countrymen and compatriots trying to create a country. And I think both sides are guilty of this, and it's only going to continue because neither side is interested in actually coming together or getting rid of this move towards violence. But the violence is mostly coming from the left, and that's been a symptom of how much the left views Donald Trump as an existential threat to the country.
But a lot of, like, you mean political violence is coming from the left, or violence in general?
Yes, both.
Okay.
Well, I think as an example, you could look at the responses to Charlie Kirk's assassination versus George Floyd's overdose and death. After George Floyd died, there was, I think, over $1 billion of damage done to the country in rioting and destruction and looting. When Charlie Kirk died, there was a lot of vigils and prayer. And I think that kind of generally gets to the difference in nature of the right and the left in terms of how they respond to these things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you think in terms of what started it? Because there's this video I see, and I post it literally every election. It was this video of John McCain and Barack Obama. John McCain was at a debate, I think, and there's this woman that's like, he was born in the Middle East, or like he was born in Africa, and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, and he literally just like grabs the mic from this woman, and he's like, no. Like, what you're not going to do is talk about him. All we do is disagree, and that's it. Why did you think that just suddenly flew out the window? And also, do you think, like, this is entirely opinion-based question, do you think Trump has handled the situation of Charlie Kirk's death in a way that has escalated or de-escalated?
I think that this is a common problem, which is like they're doing something bad, which means we can do things that are bad. The label of fascist has been applied by Gavin Newsom's Twitter account to Stephen Miller, which is echoing the same rhetoric that was written on the bullets that the shooter used to assassinate Charlie Kirk. So rather than dialing down things and stop calling Republicans fascists and like dictators who are trying to take over the country, destroy the Constitution, the left has not let go of that rhetoric. They're amplifying it. They're continuing it. And in some way, that's a consent to continue to call for murder. There's a pope one time who said, will no one rid me of this troublesome priest? And it was sort of like a call for an assassination of Becket without calling for his assassination. And that's sort of what's happening. There has been a refusal of the left to take any sort of accountability within themselves for the violence that's going on. This past weekend, a church in Michigan was shot up and burned down by another leftist person.
Was that confirmed?
Yeah.
Because I don't know the details about it.
I've been paying. Let me ask you a completely different thing about this, okay?
Okay.
And this gets to, again, the problem, which is that we're in echo chambers. We have different realities. We're seeing different versions of events. There's been much made on the left about the genocide in Gaza. And without going into that, because that's a big and complicated thing, and I think that, you know, in war, there's no one is innocent. There's always blood on both hands, and again, it gets to this like who started it, who is really the agitator.
Yeah, tit for tat, tit for tat.
But while all this is going on, there has been a genocide in Nigeria. 500,000 Christians have been murdered by Islamic radical extremists in Nigeria this year. It is an actual genocide. It is a targeted murder of a group of people based on their religious beliefs, my religious beliefs. And in this country, a Christian American who is a white man who looks like me, who thinks a lot like me, was shot in the throat for going to a college campus and, just like Socrates, trying to educate the youth. He was asking questions. He was giving his opinions. He was asking people what they think, trying to get them to think about things. They killed Socrates. In the Gospels, when Jesus was asked a question, 80% of the time he would respond with another question, which is a sort of Socratic method of trying to engage with people. And he got shot in the throat. Christians are being murdered to the tune of 500,000 just in this year alone in Nigeria, and no one is talking. Exactly. So this is what I'm saying. Your echo chamber is feeding you the narrative that Trump is fascist, that Gaza is a genocide, that the right wing of this country are trying to destroy it, and that is not at all how 77 million Americans see this situation. I want to go back to something I think is really important. In 2022, Joe Biden gave a speech called The Battle for the Soul of the Nation in Philadelphia in this country. In this speech, now what was really disturbing to me about this speech is it set a number of difficult precedents, but what he said was he was making a speech in the official capacity as the president, but he used it as a campaign stop. Now, he himself was not running, but the midterms were coming. And he said that the whole speech was about how, and he said this specifically, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an existential threat to this country. They don't believe in the rule of law. They don't believe in the Constitution. They don't believe in the Republic. They want to impose a dictatorship. He said words like, I think he would use the word violence over 10 times. And that is unethical for a president to do because it's using his office as a political bully pulpit, but it's also demonizing 77 million Americans. And that is a problem. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on April 15th, 1865. On April 11th, 1865, he gave a speech about the Reformation government in the South. And rather than demonizing all the people in the South and saying these people fought war against us, they tried to destroy our country, they're monsters who must be destroyed, he called for reconciliation, not retribution, and said the government that we're building down there is not perfect, but we must, he said, mold these disparate and disjointed parts into something better to try to form something more perfect. And that message has been lost. And it's not only Donald Trump who has been responsible for that, as much as people want to blame him for that. He has more Democrats in his administration than you would believe. Half of his administration used to be Democrats, and they've come to the right because the left has gotten so radical, and nobody on the left sees this. So I think that the situation of genocide in Nigeria is a great example of how people get all up in arms about genocide, but they don't really care about genocide. They care about the narrative, the propaganda that's being fed into their echo chamber. And that's the problem that we're having here. It's not about if Charlie Kirk was a moderate or not, or if genocide in Gaza or Nigeria is happening or not. The point is we have different realities and people prefer it that way. And rather than trying to get out of the bubble and like Lincoln said, form a more perfect union out of these different parts, Biden, Trump, whoever you want to point the finger at, everybody's more content to say these people are other, they're fascists, they're monsters, they must be rejected and destroyed, and that's what's killing us.
Yeah, I agree with the part that the echo chambers are what is killing us, but I was also asking not only on the left though, but like in terms of the right, and I don't know how to word it without sounding like divisive, you know. And I even
divisive. I
even find myself like I am myself part of the problem because I literally the amount of times that you say something and I want to be like, but the right, and you also are doing it, but the left, you know what I mean? So like we're just doing it to each other,
right?
And I think I have found that I've seen my friends, I've seen people I know in real time on both sides of the political spectrum, just like start to slowly be completely unable to listen to the person. After Charlie Kirk got murdered, there were a couple of my friends that like for the first time, they're right-leaning, posted, if you're a Democrat, if you like voted for Biden, unfollow me, block me. And I'm just like, and there were a couple of people that were furious because I said my opinion on it, which literally no one asked for, but I always want to give anyways, was like Charlie Kirk did not deserve to get murdered for his political opinions. No one deserves to get murdered regardless of their political opinions. Like you shouldn't justify that. You shouldn't celebrate that. I don't think that's okay. But when I went on Twitter, all I saw was like, it was so much anger and so much hatred and like the generalization of people on both sides. And I'm just like, and I just like, I don't know what the solution is. I'm just rambling at this point. But can I say something that I don't think helps the problem? And I'm going to do the same thing you just did, but from the left's perspective. Elon Musk, to his 200 million followers, posted a screenshot of a tweet that said, "When is Charlie Kirk's wife next?" It had no likes, no retweets. And mind you, there have been Russian bots that have been fully promoting this and like completely capitalizing off of the divisiveness. Does a message like that not contribute to the problem? This
again is, so what you're doing is pointing at something that someone else did on the other's team and saying that means that we over 100.
No, I'm not justifying anything. I'm not justifying anything.
This is what I'm saying. It's like just because there's wrong behavior on both sides, over 100,000 people on social media were openly celebrating Charlie Kirk's death and murder. And
how many people are in the U.S.?
It is a very vocal and big thing. And
I feel like they're the loud minority. Okay. That's the part that I get frustrated with when people generalize. It's like the same way I'm like, okay, so there are people that still believe that slavery should exist and they still tweet about it. Am I going to say like, all you Republicans are some horrible people? Also, mind you, I know people on the left actually do that. So like, I can't be, you know what I mean? But I'm saying it's a problem on both sides. That's what I'm saying. I think that
Aristotle, in his treatise on government, begins with a discussion of friendship.
We're friends.
And at the end of the day, everybody has to think about this in terms of relationships. And just because you are right does not mean that you are allowed to be abusive with the truth or your point of view. And I think that there's a lack of accountability. I think there's a lot of blame shifting. And in the aftermath of the assassination of a man who was just trying to engage in political discourse, did not hold public office, the inability of the left to just like publicly and in a unified way condemn these people who are celebrating irritated and agitated a lot of people on the right. And I think that let's look at this from unity, because we're getting into this back and forth.
Yes.
I think something that people fail to do sometimes is to appreciate the values and virtues of the different sides of the political spectrum. There are values to collectivism on the left, and there are values and beautiful things from individualism on the right. People who are more likely to vote Democratic or to be on the left usually have a much higher value in terms of their personality on trait openness. They're open to new ideas, open to new things. People on the right, the most prominent personality trait of people on the right is a disgust response, which is an instinct towards preservation, protection, cleanliness, health, and general flourishing. Both of those value systems are important for a society. And I think thinking about this in different contexts, right? Like in art, we want artists to participate in the mediums that have been formed and engage with the cultural tapestry that we've created, but also to bring in new ideas and to challenge forms and expand the palette. And those ideas are in tension, just like this trait openness is in tension with this conservative, protective adherence to tradition that the right is more known for. But at the end of the day, we both need each other. And if we could change the dialogue away from who's right, who's wrong, and this conflict thing, and more towards celebrating and appreciating the fact that in a healthy society, we need collectivism and individualism. We need balance between all these things, between authoritarianism and libertarianism. Then we could come more towards a place of an actual center and have a more healthy society overall. That is what I would like to see more prominently discussed, rather than getting into these trenches, because all that happens, Claire, when we discuss like our ideals, our beliefs, the things that we have as hopes and dreams, we get closer together, we get deeper understanding of each other, and we come more together. But if we get into this, like, well, Elon Musk did this, and like somebody posted this on, then it's just, that's all just debate and conflict, and that conflict breaks connection. Communication and discussion creates and fosters connection.
I think conflict and good resolution can bring you closer, though.
In conflict and good faith, yes. That is how you form a strong relationship with someone, is have 10,000 fights with them. But it's also like I had a relationship with somebody, all we did was fight. And I kept saying, I think we agree. But she would still keep debating me, even though I wasn't disagreeing with her. And so that's the kind of conflict that is not healthy, right? So like you want to have conflict in the sense of creating peace and understanding and knowing each other and where your boundaries are and roles and relationships and just understanding more about each other, but not if it's just pushing you further and further apart.
Yeah, I think both. I think in relationships and politics and in life, it's super important to listen from a place of understanding, not listening from a place of response, because I feel like a lot of people do that. Like you see it online. I mean, I probably did that today. You probably did that a little bit today. Like it's so important, I feel like, to stop, pause, ask questions from a place of curiosity for that person and their beliefs, because I feel like we do this in relationships. We also do this in like the regular world on the day-to-day. We jump to a place of judgment. We jump to a place of entitlement. We jump to a place of like, but me, but I, how does this affect me? Versus like, okay, this person is talking. This is about them and this isn't about me. The 4 commandments, 4 testaments. What's that book? What's that book called? No.
The 4 Gospels? Oh, the 4 Agreements.
The 4 Agreements, not the 4 Testaments. Don't take it personally. Be true with your word. What was the third one?
I can't remember now. It's been a long time since I read that.
Do your best. Do your best. And okay. I think like I recently read that book and it honestly really resonated with me. But it was like, okay, don't take it personally. Seek to understand. Be true with your word. Like don't be poisonous with your word. Like be careful about what you say before you say it. I feel like those are all things that people could apply in relationships as well as real life on the day-to-day, because everyone's losing their minds.
I agree with all of that. And I think that, yeah, we have to be responsible and accountable for ourselves and to take care of our side of the fence. And I will say one other thing about this. I have not been registered for with any political party for over 10 years at this point. I don't share with people about politics. As you moisturize, I'll continue talking about this.
Yes, please
The
do.
assassination of Charlie Kirk hit me very personally in a lot of ways.
Why?
Because when I was younger, I used to do a lot of what he did. I would talk to I have a lot of friends who are atheists. I have a lot of friends who are agnostic, or many of my friends that I grew up with are on the left. I used to discuss a lot of these things with them and try to engage in dialogue. I have found and felt so much unwelcomeness and hostility around that I kind of have stopped. And I live in New York City, which is a very liberal city. And Charlie Kirk went down a path that I could have gone down when I was younger. And I didn't go in that direction because it's too much animosity, too much hate, too much blowback. And I think that the reason why I wanted to talk about this with you on the record in public was because there's a Chinese saying, the tallest tree catches the wind, which is a way of saying it's this collectivist idea, this leftist idea that if you step out of line, you're going to catch friction, you're going to catch pushback. So stay in your place, stay in the group, don't be different, don't stand out. And I think that is a very un-American thing. It should be okay for people to have different political views and be able to share them openly. I should be welcome and safe to do that. And so that's one of the reasons. Do you feel
welcome and safe to do that here with me?
I'm doing it with you because I am demanding that as a fundamental right of being an American, is to be able to say that I'm okay. I'm comfortable sharing these things, and it doesn't mean that I'm not a registered Republican. I'm not committed to MAGA or Donald Trump. I wouldn't judge you if you were. Exactly. But I have to be able to say that, hey, I don't think this is okay. I think there is a problem with political violence. I think it is coming from the left right now. I think that can change, but that's where it is right now. And so, in any event, that assassination made me feel like it's important to just speak out, to step up, and to just engage in that dialogue, because the risk is if there is nobody talking to the other side, that's when we have a serious crisis and problem. And if Charlie's not there doing that, other people have to do that. And to try to do it the way we have, of like trying to find connection and common ground and appreciation for each other, as opposed to just arguing in conflict and pushing each other further and further apart.
Can I share something with you? I used to do the exact same thing that Charlie Kirk was doing, but on the Democratic side. So I used to be a political TikToker, and I had like 300,000 followers on TikTok. I was like one of the more moderate content creators. It was actually pretty funny. And it's interesting. I didn't realize you were doing that too. That's crazy.
Well, not the exact same thing, but I used to just talk to people.
Yeah, no. And so I would go on like one of those random sites where you talk to strangers, and I would talk to like people. And I talked to this kid. He was in Pennsylvania, which was a swing state at the time. I gave him like an in-depth like analysis of reasons why Biden should win. Okay, why Biden should win. And then he told me, like, on the day of the election, he told me that his parents ended up voting for Biden. Obviously, I was really happy. We don't need to talk about everything after the fact, but like in that time, I thought it was really important to have like the conversations with Republicans. But I will say, and I'm very open and honest about this, the reason why I stopped it was because of the left. I had openly stated in this one video that I didn't want the police to be defunded, and I still believe that. I don't think we should defund the police. And I was called racist. I was told to shut my mouth because it is not my place to speak on a topic that I don't understand. And I was kind of like hated by both sides of the spectrum. The moderate Republicans were actually really, really, really kind to me, like genuinely so sweet. Moderate Democrats were very, very kind to me and very sweet. I would say far left was just like ruthless. Like they told me I was I might as well be Republican. Like I might as well be a Trump supporter at this point, because I also said I'm still friends with Trump supporters, and I'm still friends with Trump supporters. Like I will very openly state that I hate a lot of what Trump is doing. I don't like Trump, but that doesn't mean I can't be friends with people who voted for him. And at the time, I was so scared to say that. And I did say that. And I got slaughtered on the internet. And at the time, like, I mean, it's crazy because we've kind of seen like the pendulum swing back and forth between that. Now there's the like anti-cancel culture, but at the time, cancel culture was very popular. So people were trying to cancel me for that. But my point is like, although I don't agree with what Charlie Kirk was saying, I do respect the fact that he was like a voice in terms of trying to have these conversations with people. Because as being someone who was trying to do that in a different way, But for the left side, it's a hard place to be in. And I would do these Biden fact-checking videos and I would do these Trump fact-checking videos because I wanted to make sure people knew I was not being biased. And it was funny because on like the Biden fact-checking videos, everyone would be like, you're literally lying, you're literally being biased. I'm like, watch the video after this one. And then they'd be like, you're lying, you're being biased. And then, I mean, the what was really like the nail in the coffin for me in terms of doing this when I was super burnt out was when I had publicly said that there's this guy who is pretty far right, like sharing that the vaccine gives you autism, the COVID vaccine gives you autism, and like you should do like the bleach thing instead. I was like, hey, here's why this is not accurate. I'm not a scientist, but here's like, I would spend hours on these videos to make them non-combative, non-attacking, like really, really kind, no matter to who I was speaking, for which I got a lot of compliments on, right? But there was a guy who sent me a video of a gun and he sent it to my Instagram and he was like, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, you stupid. We're not going to get into the names that he called me, but he's like, I'm going to kill you. And then I blocked him and then he sent it again. And this time he was like, I'm going to kill your brothers. I know where you live. I know what like your family looks like. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is like way too much. So after that was like the last time I spoke about things politically, but it's been really interesting to see how things have played out since then. I think the left creator movement has moved further left. I can fully agree with that for the most part. I think there's still like some moderates. There's this guy named Clark who's a moderate Republican, and he is like my favorite creator out there. And he just calls it like he sees it. So I think if people can go back to just clearly stating their truth of what they want to say and not feel like they're being attacked for it, unless honestly, I mean, whatever, free speech, you should be able to say whatever you want, but if you're saying some like super racist or heinous things about someone, maybe there can be some consequence. Now we're getting into free speech. I'm yapping, but I do wish, same as you, is like I would love to see people to be able to have conversations with each other who disagree with each other. Like, I mean, I fully disagree with my boss and half of the people in this office, and we get along just fine. They're incredible people. You're an incredible person. I can sit across from here and disagree with a lot of what you're saying, but that doesn't make you wrong, and that doesn't make you a bad person. Just like me thinking the way I think doesn't make me wrong or doesn't make me a bad person.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that that's one of the most important things about America. I think on the spectrum,
far left.
well, just like on the spectrum of collectivism versus individualism, right? Like the left versus the right, there is this like what you're describing. There's this cohesiveness, groupthink, singleness of mind. On the right, there's a much more big, like diverse spectrum. Like
there was data about
Ben
that.
Shapiro, and this is what I think is
interesting. It was like
right?
literally diversity. It was a diversity of thought amongst Republicans or conservatives was a lot more broad than diversity of thought amongst people who are left.
And that's what you're seeing is individualism versus collectivism, right? And so like again, for society to function, we need community. We need some collectivist things. We need some sort of centralized government. We need some of these things. But I think a big virtue of America is the value of the individual, which again comes from Christianity and Christian values. That's directly tied. It's like light from the sun. Individualism comes from Christianity because that was the first time in political, philosophical, religious history where people said like an individual has a soul that has rights and value and worth that doesn't come from God, from anyone else but God. It doesn't come from the state, which Tim Kaine said in Congress last week or the week before, that the rights of people come from the government, which is not what our Constitution says and not what our values are. But that idea that individuals matter and that has a lot of value, and that result is what you're talking about, this ability to have differences of opinion but still come together. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump have radically different opinions on like over half a dozen different issues. Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson disagree vehemently on many things, but they're still able to have these dialogues and still be like, this is my country. I believe in it. I love it. I want it to prosper. I want it to do well. And I'm committed to do everything I can to have it do well, even if I don't always agree with the policies that we pursue or the outcomes of elections. And I think that the left could benefit from some of that too.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Individualism is helpful. And collectivism has its place too, but that's what I'm trying to get at is that these
there's
polar
beauty
extremes.
In both.
We need both. We need both. There's
we
values
need the yin
in both
and the
sides.
yang,
right?
Just like we do in relationships, which is our next topic.
You got to work on your segues. That's just not good enough. All right, what's next, Claire?
So, You have seen me. I think I've opened up to you a lot about relationships. I know you've been through your fair share of rough patches and failed relationships. You know what I mean? But
No comment.
I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to talk to you about the rise of therapy culture, because I think, you have a huge increase. I don't know the exact data, but a huge increase of younger people who are going to therapy. And it's interesting. 69% of young adults reportedly ended a relationship due to toxicity in the last year. I've seen a lot of labeling of things. We say someone's toxic. We say someone's like a bad person, whether they're a narcissist. Oh, they have like bipolar disorder. Like we like to overanalyze and overlabel people. How do you think we can balance the tolerance with the actually knowing when someone's bad news?
I would reframe all of this again to come back to, so I think where this is coming from, therapy tends to focus on dysfunction, on problems, on traumas and wounds, on coping mechanisms, on unhealthy attachment styles and different sorts of behavioral patterns that fall under this category broadly of toxicity. I think that a more constructive behavior is to orient oneself and one's thinking and one's behavior towards retraining, reconditioning, coaching towards healthy behaviors, towards healthy relationships with yourself, healthy thought patterns, healthy behavioral patterns, and to focus in that direction, as opposed to getting so fixated on how is this person toxic, how is this person a narcissist, how is this person avoidantly attached, or whatever labels we want to put on each other. The problem with that, again, is similar, this idea of friendship, of relationships, of politics, of labeling the other side. Anything that allows you to say, well, that person's terrible and they're doing monstrous things, so I don't have to,
it's like a self-righteous perspective.
Right, but the reason it's so appealing is that it alleviates you of your responsibility to take accountability, to look at your side of the fence and to fix the mistakes you're making. Because many times, if we're in a toxic relationship, all times, if you're in a toxic relationship, there's also something that you're getting from it that you're sourcing in an unhealthy way. And you are doing some kind of behavioral pattern that is just as manipulative, just as exploitative, and there's something in yourself that needs to be reassessed. And I'm not saying that, survivors of abuse should be victim blamed by any means, but a way to get healthy is to identify what within yourself, what patterns of behavior, what stories, limiting beliefs you have, whatever coping mechanisms you have allowed you to get into that place where you're in a toxic situation in the first place. And then instead of focusing on the problems and the issues that you have, focus on repeated behaviors, practices, thought patterns, relationship styles, all these different kinds of things, corrective relational experiences that orient you towards positive relationships. And that is, I think, a more healthy or a more effective path to healing and to secure healthy relationships and just a happy, fulfilling life.
Yeah. And I feel like my issue in relationships, which I had a heart-to-heart about with my mom about this, it's like, sometimes you think, me personally, it's like I think I can love the person hard enough and they'll get it, or like they'll be their fullest, best, and reaching their most high potential selves. And I think like in my past relationship with my serious boyfriend out of college, his name was Kyle, he really taught me what it was like to be loved, like what felt like a little bit unconditionally. Like I feel like I got a taste of that, and I feel like I was super combative, and I had been mega traumatized by the boyfriend before then. So I was like, literally the first date, I was like, I don't want to get married. I was like, I don't want to have kids. I was like, I literally don't want to date ever. And I think he thought, which he literally did, like he was the epitome of doing that. He's like, if I love her hard enough, like she'll change her mind. And I did. And I think for some reason, I feel like I've adapted that mentality with some of the people that I'm with. It's just like, oh, I can, like they're suffering or they're troubled. Like, let me see if I can fix that. Like, I was like, I feel like I'm put on this earth to teach people things. And you, along with some of my friends, have told me it's like at some point it's going to start chipping away at you. Like it's depleting. Like you just like deplete, you start over again. Then you fill yourself back up. Then you deplete. Then you deplete. Then you deplete. So I don't know why I just yapped about that. But the question that comes with that was asking, when do you know that it's time to leave?
I think it's a common experience that you've had. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a very vulnerable thing. I think it's a mistake to misinterpret someone's emotional unavailability as a challenge to prove your worth and to try harder to get them to recognize.
And I honestly, I feel like I'm wondering my self-worth, because I was like, no, I have high self-worth. Like I know I deserve better and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait, look at my track record really quick. Like, look at the situations that I was in and I'm currently in, respectfully. Like it.
Keep going. You're going to get there yourself, I think. You just keep walking, yeah.
If I did have really high self-worth, I don't think I would have been in these situations to begin with, because I would have known that, like, I deserve someone who isn't whole. Like, I don't need someone who's fully healed and all that stuff, but someone who respects me enough to consciously choose me and make me feel chosen. And the situation that I'm in right now is currently not that, which I had to learn the hard way. So
I'm not sure if there's a question in all this. Or
I don't know. There's a question.
There's a lot on your mind.
Yeah,
clearly.
I know. There's a lot on my mind, and I think. Sorry, I realize I've talked a lot in this episode. Yeah. What do you think?
Let me know when you want me. I'll
when
be
do you
here.
think? Shut up. When do you think it's time to throw in the towel, but also B, like, how do you develop a sense of self-worth? You were in a horrible relationship. How did you get self-worth after that?
Okay, so those are two different questions. I don't know if it's so much about self-worth. I think, all right, so how do you decide when it's time to throw in the towel? Yeah. Everybody has to kind of make this decision for themselves. Sisyphus will keep pushing the boulder forever. Some people are content to do that. Some people do that, and then, sometime in their 60s or 70s realize they've never been with the right person and get divorced. There's been a huge rise in what they call gray divorce, or people getting divorced in older age. I think what's important to understand is that it's better to be single than to be in a bad relationship. Being in a good relationship is better than being single. But once you realize that being with someone who is not right for you is way more destructive than just being single and holding space for a healthy relationship to grow and being emotionally available for that, you stop being tempted to prove your self-worth, to fight battles that are unwinnable. But I think it kind of comes down to the particulars of an individual situation. There's not like a simple, if they do this, then, et cetera. You have to reflect for yourself. What are your goals? What are your values? What are things that are, non-negotiables for you, deal breakers? But then you just need to make sure that there's reciprocity, that there's mutual respect and trust, that your needs and values matter, that you're not being dismissed, minimized, or invalidated. You don't want to be manipulated or exploited. But, the other thing too is that, like, if you are trying to bend over backwards, shower someone with love, flood them with affection, erase yourself and your needs just so that they will recognize, like, wow, this person's pouring so much love into me, they must be important and valuable, let me love them back and meet their needs, that's a form of manipulation that's unhealthy too. And that's not the proper way to cultivate a relationship either. It's something you have to find in the context of whatever relationship you're in, work out for yourself. There's not like a more specific rule book than that. You have to kind of feel your way into that in each situation and circumstance that you're in. Yeah, and I think I'm just giving myself all the red flags right now within myself. It's like I like to believe what people say. I think I have the habit of doing that literally all the time. I trust strangers. I literally like hitchhiked in Costa Rica when I was 13 years old at a camp, and I almost got kicked out. Like, if you tell me that you are worth $5 billion and like the sky is purple, if I believe that to your core you are a good person, I'll be like, you know what? I believe that person. Like, I believe in them. And I think that has been something, it's been a trait that I admire about myself. But my friend said, like, my forgiveness and my tolerance is something that is beneficial in friendships, because I think you can make it work in friendships. But like romantically, it is to my detriment. So I think that's something I have to work on. There are certain behaviors where you can sustain a relationship with someone and it will still be dysfunctional. And we have this like metric of the longevity of a relationship to measure its success. Unhealthy relationships go on for a very long time, and people will do things to, like what you're saying, they put these stories around things, they justify, they explain away, like, oh, they were just tired, like whatever. Like, so I don't know. It's not something that's unusual or uncommon, but I think it's something to reflect on. I think a good way to do this is that, like, if you if someone who is your friend, who you loved deeply, was in the situation you were in, would you feel like they are being valued, like they're being respected? Would you want them to be in that situation, or would you want them to get out? And the real risk, I think, of this is like, if you're staying in a situation where you're not being valued, you're not being respected, your needs are being ignored, your boundaries are being violated, etc. The real risk is that it damages your trust and your relationship with yourself. Because if you are anxiously attached to another person, you're avoidantly attached to yourself. There's some kind of need, something within yourself that you're not facing, you're not working on. And that's where you need to focus your energy and attention, not on why are they this way? What can I do to change them or fix them? You need to kind of reflect and go internal. And, and that's where you should focus.
I think in my situation, it was like I was telling myself that I'm not trying to change this person, that I accept them. And if I was really like the tolerant person that I say I am, and I can challenge myself, like I can tolerate all of this, I can, be okay with everything. And I think this situation was different. I do actually believe it was different from my last situation. It was like, I genuinely was at a place of such low self-worth that it was like, okay, everything that this person's telling me that is cruel towards me, because he was very cruel, is the truth. And this time, this person is not mean to me. He doesn't like treat me horribly by any means, but we just have core misalignments that we can't agree with. And I think we are both staying in this hoping that the other person changes, and it just won't happen. So
yeah, I mean, I think you kind of know where you are and where you want to be on this.
We got it on lock.
Sounds like you've made your decision. There's something I was going to say about
decision the council has confirmed.
The idea I had was gone. The jet lag is catching up to me. I had something I was going to say about that, and it's gone.
So what does loving yourself look like in a relationship?
What does loving yourself look like in a relationship?
Yes.
I'm not really sure how to answer that question. What do you mean by that?
Because it's good to love selflessly, right? But if you're loving so selflessly, hear me out. If you're loving selflessly to the point where you're sacrificing and over-compromising on your own needs, then that's not good. So how do you love yourself in a relationship while balancing loving the other person?
Yeah, so I think the thing you're describing is just how relationships work, right? Like, there's an exchange of value, there's a psychological element of it, and there's an economic element of it. And you have to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a position where there's a lack of reciprocity, where you're being taken advantage of, abused, imbalances occur. Really what you're looking for is, I think it's just a mistake a lot of people make about how they go about finding a relationship partner. In dating, we go looking for somebody who feels exciting, who feels like whatever, they trigger some familiar wound or excite some part of us, and that's what we look for as a marker of a healthy relationship partner. When in reality, a healthy, stable, secure relationship should be something that's calming, should be like warming, securing, supportive. And you shouldn't feel like you have to constantly be in a battle, a negotiation, have your shields up and like guarding yourself against someone taking advantage of you. So yeah, I think it's a common thing where like in childhood, sometimes we get this conditioning of like, when you have an intimate attachment partner in childhood, it's usually a primary caregiver. You're dependent on them to live. And so when we get into an intimate attachment with somebody as a romantic partner, we have that same projection of like, I need this person to live. So you'll tolerate anything and do anything to try to keep that relationship intact. And that's kind of like what you were describing before. But the reality is now you're an adult. You can source secure attachment. You can source needs from other places. You don't have to stay in situations where you're being poisoned in certain ways 20% of the time or 15% of the time. You don't have to accept violent outbursts or abuse, or you don't have to accept people disrespecting you a lot. I think that was something I realized in my I had a long relationship that was very unhealthy, but I had unconsciously normalized disrespect in the name of unconditional love. And that was really toxic and eventually led to a place that was just really unhealthy. But I think this starts in how we found these relationships and how they're built, because you train a person how to treat you just like you would train like a child, raise a child, train a dog, whatever the case may be. But what you accept from them is what becomes normal in the relationship, and what is established as normal tends to grow. And that's how you get into these situations where, like, okay, I thought this person was good for me. I thought we were in love and this was going to be a good relationship. And now I'm feeling all kinds of like abuse, neglect, and erasure and so forth. But you get there by degrees, and it's a conditioning thing where people will see what they can get away with, and if they can, they'll go further. There was a dog that my neighbors had that was only supposed to go into a certain place in the kitchen, and the dog would push those boundaries all the time. And I think we do that in relationships, and we need to be able to say, hey, that's my boundary. You crossed it. Once is a mistake, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. And if you're not able to respect that boundary, then I'm not able to be in a relationship with you.
Yeah, and I think the part where it gets, I think where the part where that gets unhealthy, and I think it falls on the responsibility of the person who's continuously giving the person another chance as well, is like, what is it? Once an accident, twice a coincidence, 3 times a pattern. Yeah. If someone shows you who they are, and you choose not to believe it, and I'm not talking about the abuse aspect. I'm talking about someone who's like genuinely misaligned with what you're looking for and what you want, and you continue to stay in it hoping that they'll change. You're also part of the problem. It's like it's clearly just a misalignment in the values that you guys have and share. And that doesn't mean they're a bad person.
No.
And I think that's the part that makes it harder, is like when they're not a bad person. Yeah. You can't villainize them, and you shouldn't have to, and you don't want to. Like my current situation, great person, but it's just not. We don't want the same things, and that doesn't mean that he's a bad guy. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad girl. It just means that we're not aligned.
I agree. Yeah, and I think that's a healthy perspective to take on that. I think there's degrees to this, but I think in general it's best to avoid demonizing and villainizing the other side of any relationship situation, because at the end of the day, they're just a person with needs that's trying to survive and has their own coping mechanisms and problems that they're working on. And, nobody's perfect. People make mistakes. So forgiveness is important. We talked about that a little bit last time.
Forgive.
But, you have to have compassion on everyone.
Yeah. And I think I just want to touch on
I don't really know what we're
forgiveness.
talking about here. This has been kind of murky. I feel that there's something more that we'll have to discuss off camera. I don't know really where you're going with this.
I don't know where I'm going with it either. I love talking to you, and I feel like we can talk about anything. So no, I'm going to
blush now, if that's okay with you.
My last point I think I wanted to make on all this, since we're talking about relationships, is I think like something that you said last time is like we were talking about how forgiveness is compassion, right? Being compassionate means that you are able to forgive someone, right?
I think there's nuance to that, yeah.
There's nuance to that. But I think like in your mind, in future relationships, how do you view forgiveness now? Like, is that something that's changed?
I learned a lot about forgiveness. So I think one of the mistakes I was making in my prior relationship was I was too quick to justify, too quick to forgive. And like I said last time, I was short-circuiting that process of confession, repentance, atonement, and then the resulting of that is the healing, the forgiveness. And I was just saying, oh, it's fine, it's okay. And like explaining things away from them before they'd even admitted that they'd hurt me. And what I was unconsciously doing was encouraging that abuse to continue. So I learned a lot about forgiveness. I learned that, I think that there's a lot of examples from Jesus about forgiveness. When he's on the cross, there's 2 people who are being crucified along with him. They call him the Joker and the thief. One of them makes fun of Jesus. And I think this is a really interesting example from recent events, right? There were a lot of people who made fun of what happened to Charlie Kirk. And then there was a lot of people. The guy made fun of Jesus. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross, right? Which is a repetition of Satan's line, if thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. The Joker, the people ridiculing Jesus and the person making fun of them said, if thou be the Son of God, just like Satan said, come down from the cross. And then the other person, the thief, said, like, Lord, like we're getting the just results of our actions, but you're an innocent man, Lord. Remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said, I say unto you, this day thou shalt be with me in paradise. So he forgives the man that repents and who, repents, who wants to be forgiven, who regrets what he's done, who admits he's made a mistake. And that is the Christian model. That's what the Christians did to Paul when he came to them. He was like, hey, I've made a mistake. I've been wrong. Please accept me. And they were willing to offer him that repentance and forgiveness. Erica Kirk publicly forgave the man who murdered her husband, which I think is
I thought that was beautiful.
I thought it was a very bold example of Christian forgiveness. Donald Trump also said that he doesn't forgive. And I think that is the correct response to that, is that the Christian thing to do is to forgive the man, but there is still consequences, because if you are not willing to have consequences, mercy to the perpetrator of abuse of murder is adding to the abuse and the attack on the victim. So it is a injustice. It is not Christian love to Charlie Kirk not to say that there are consequences for Tyler for murdering him, but it is also the Christian thing to forgive him because he's worthy of that forgiveness. So I think that's an interesting thing about Jesus forgives the thief, but not the joker. And there is Erica Kirk forgives Tyler, but there are still the consequences for Tyler because of what he did to Charlie. There's a lot about forgiveness I've been thinking about, and there's a lot that goes into these kinds of things. But I learned that, like I said in the last episode, there is a reason that Lucifer is not sitting in heaven with God. And if there's no moral system that requires you to show kindness and to offer access to you to someone who has made it a habit out of hurting you without acknowledging it, without repenting for it, without trying to atone for it. And that's so I think that there's a lot to that. But I think, Erica has given all of us a reason to think about forgiveness recently.
Yeah, I think just the act of forgiveness, I think, is also like I saw people were very judgmental towards her deciding to be forgiving. I think, first of all, it's no one else's place to decide what she should or shouldn't do because it is her process to grieve, right? It was her husband that was killed, not anyone else's. You know what I mean? He's a husband, he's a father, he's a son, etc. But I think there's the most, I think, beautiful part about forgiveness is that it really, like, in my opinion, sure, you free the other person. Maybe that's not the intention, but it feels like you are freeing the other person. But I do think you're freeing yourself. Yes. I think when you don't hold that resentment, when you let go of that like hatred and that anger that you have towards someone that hurt you, it's such a liberating feeling. It really is. I want to say this is a really great point that you brought up. I've been thinking about this a lot personally and in this context, right? So the reason why this is so important, the need for revenge is an addictive thing. There's a book called I think it's The Science of Revenge. It's a study of like the addictive nature of revenge, how this revenge fantasy and ruminating on revenge is addictive. It's habit forming. It's really unhealthy. And it's a cycle that people get stuck in. And one of the things I think people struggle with when they have to forgive is that they experience forgiveness as almost as though they're saying that what happened, what was done to them, the abuse that they suffered or the murder of Charlie Kirk was okay. And that's not what's being said. It's alleviating yourself, just like you said, of the need for revenge, which is a poisonous and toxic thing that can get into you. So the way I have done this, so let's use Erica as an example, right? And then I'll go personal. Actually, we'll start personal. So the way I've done this is a combination of King David's words about King Saul. So King Saul in the Bible was trying to kill David for no reason other than he hated him. David had not done anything wrong. And there's another example. I think I should have looked this up before I came in here, but it's in 2 Kings 17, I think. There's a king of Israel, or king of Judah, who was persecuted and trying to be killed as a child, and one of the priests saved him so that he could become king. And later on, as king, he started, doing things that were out of alignment with God. And the son of the priest who had saved his life criticized him publicly. And that king had that priest killed. His name was Zechariah. And Zechariah's words combined with David's words about Saul helped me get away from this notion of revenge, right? So like instead of ruminating on revenge and what's been done to me, the prayer that I came up with was, may the Lord God Almighty look upon the situation and judge betwixt me and thee, because again, we're biased.
I've done things that were wrong. I was wrong. I've sinned a lot of times to a lot of people. I've done many, many things wrong in my life. So let God judge, and then require it at thine hand, is what the prophet Zechariah said. Required at thine hand means like if there's something on account that needs to be settled, God will get revenge. So this lets go of the need to get revenge. It gives you peace, right? And that is a kind of forgiveness when nobody goes through that process of confession, repentance, atonement, forgiveness with you, but you still need to let go of the need for revenge to get peace within yourself. That prayer is something every time I've had this instinct for revenge or this irritation about the wounds that have been inflicted on me by other people, I say that out louder to myself, and it helps me let go because God is going to be the judge of that. God will judge me and others, and I'm trusting him to get revenge of revenge. The Bible says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So in Erica Kirk's situation, her forgiving him, the murderer of her husband, is her way of getting peace within herself so that she does not have to ruminate on revenge, which is the Christian path to inner peace. Then Trump's job, the government's job, Trump is the avatar of the government in this case, they're the ones who are supposed to get revenge, to mete out justice, to promulgate justice. That's in the book of Romans as well, too. So that is the way those things are divided, right? Like, you're not supposed to be spending your time and energy ruminating on getting revenge. Leave that to God. Leave that to the courts. There are other ways of resolving that. But within yourself, you amplify the wound that has been inflicted and poison yourself unnecessarily if you spend your time getting stuck in this trap of addiction, revenge fantasies, and rumination on that. So that's something I've thought about a lot. You bring up a great point by mentioning that, but that's some of my thinking on this and something I've been doing a lot myself. Then, from that point, you can replace those feelings of revenge with thoughts of gratitude, of joy, of just appreciation of where you are, and the beauty of that situation of being able to have that peace and not give up your power to someone else who hurt you years ago, to ruin every day of your life being continuously hurt by what they've done to you. So I think that's a great blessing, and some lessons from Christianity that have helped me a lot.
Yeah, and I feel like if you can, like, going into the idea of gratitude and, like you said, thinking positively. I'm not saying toxic positivity, but I'm saying, like, in any bad situation or anything, any feeling of rejection, resentment, I think something that helps me get through anything like that is when I'm able to take a step back and look at, okay, what did I learn? Like, for example, the last situation that I was in that was absolutely horrible. It was like, okay, I learned that these are the boundaries that I have to hold with someone else. I'm so grateful that I was able to show up and be a good person to the person that I was with, even though it ended horribly, right? It's like, I'm so grateful that I was able to show them what unconditional love looks like, even though they couldn't reciprocate it. And maybe that's a little like bit of a too much of an optimistic, broken model way of thinking, but I think, I'm not saying I'm Mother Teresa by any means over here, you know what I mean? But I'm saying like there's a lot of beauty in being able to feel gratitude towards giving without the hope or expectation of something in return.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, like, I've been guilty of that too. Like, somebody betrayed me in a terrible, terrible way, and I had that sort of fawning response too of like, don't you see how much I love you? Why would you do this? And like, looking back on that, I could look at that and say, like, what a weak thing to do. But then another part of me says, I'm extremely resilient. I have great faith. I have great love, and I'm willing and able and capable of amazing things because of that love that I have within me. And the other thing too is beautiful about that, you don't lose that because you're not in that relationship anymore. That's still within you. So you can carry that forward.
It's from you. It's not from the other person. You didn't get like this. A lot of people, when I feel like they go through breakups or something, it's like, oh, but he did this. Like he brought out this side of me. It was like, no, you had that the whole time. You just didn't realize it existed.
And that will be there in a relationship for someone who is willing to value it and appreciate it and treat it with the care and respect and love and affection that it deserves. And it will be a beautiful, beautiful thing. So that's something I took from that relationship too, is like, John David Rockefeller wrote some letters to his son. He said, life is like riding a bicycle. You fall off many times, but the key is to get back up, keep riding. Don't let things turn into tombstones. Let them be stepping stones, and keep striving forward and keep the forward momentum. So just because somebody isn't able to receive the love that you have within you doesn't mean it's lost. It means it's still there and it's still strong. And when you find someone who's able to receive that, it'll be a really beautiful and powerful thing. And that's a joyful thing because, look, in life, we get to a point where we're like, oh, I've experienced it all. I've done it all. I've never had a long-term, healthy, sustaining, a loving relationship. And that is a sad thing because I'm, 33, but it's also a very empowering and beautiful thing because that means there's one of the most magnificent human experiences I have not yet to have. And that is something worth living for and gives me a lot of joy to get out of bed and to keep working and building.
You're going to experience that one day.
Because it's still on the horizon.
Because you got to switch the mindset. It's not that, oh my God, I've never had a relationship. I haven't had that first feeling yet. I've never had that before. And so the fact that I'm looking forward that I'm able to experience that one day is so incredible.
Right. Yeah. It's important to have hope. And that gives me hope, right? There's faith, there's hope, there's love. And one of the things I'm hoping for is better things in the future of many kinds, but that's one of them. And I think it's an important thing to have something to look forward to. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to.
And I think I think it is so beautiful to be able to look at the world despite bad things happening to you, despite bad things happening around you, and still be able to remove the jaded glasses off. And honestly, put the rose-tinted glasses on. Well, life is amazing. You know what I mean?
The rose-tinted glasses are what cause you to miss the red flags.
Yeah, I'm talking about for life in general. I feel like we live in an era, me guilty as well. It's just negativity, complaining. It's sometimes you have to wake up and look in the mirror and be like, you know what? Life is pretty damn good.
This is lower your threshold for joy.
Yes.
You can.
Yes.
So there's something I've been reading and thinking about a lot. There's this tantric practice, which kind of teaches you that just in breathing, in movement, in walking, in eating, in looking at a sunset, you can have pleasure. You can have great deals of joy in simple somatic or sensory experiences, and they're available to you at any time if you are willing and capable of, and have the luxury in many cases of directing your attention and attunement to those things and just being grateful for them and just taking great joy in how delicious it is to have a meal. Instead of watching a podcast or watching TV, sit and savor how good it feels to eat a delicious meal, or be grateful for friends, or all these other things. Lower your threshold for joy, I think, is a great path to a much more abundant experience of life. Yeah. And I think so many times people only allow themselves to feel joy in these huge moments of triumph, or a wedding or something like that.
It has to be a thing.
Right. I woke up, I've been jet lagged as hell. I woke up at 4 a.m. the last 3 days, and I haven't been able to get back to bed. I think I've slept 8 hours in the last 5 days, which I haven't done since college in many cases. But in any event, this morning I watched the sunrise come up after doing yoga and ate an apple, and it was just a really beautiful experience. And I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't been jet lagged. So, it's not as though you should say that all these bad things happen to you are a good thing. But I think this is something I learned from the Bible. Everything for me goes back to the Bible or movies, but so many times in the Bible, God turns things that Satan meant for evil into good. In Genesis, his brothers sell him into slavery into Egypt, and he ends up being the person who saves the entire nation of Israel and all of Egypt because of where God puts him and how he uses him. Jesus was murdered by all these people, and the devil has his plan to kill him, but that's a redemptive story too. That's all throughout Psalms and Proverbs and David's story, and just all throughout the Bible. So I think that is the great opportunity of life. When evil happens, when bad things happen, when mistakes are made, when we stumble, when we fall, when we sin, when we're wounded, when we're wronged, we can choose to ruminate on revenge and become bitter and turn into a different kind of a monster that we don't want to be. Or we can choose to lean into love, lean into joy, lean into gratitude, find paths to forgiveness, and grow anyway. And because you don't have to be defined by these problems, by these experiences, these wounds, these issues. You can choose a different path. You can write a different story, and you can be redeemed. And that's hallelujah.
And you're not a victim. It's just plot armor.
You're a survivor, not a victim. It changes that mindset.
It's plot armor. It's character building all the time. Yeah. The worst things could happen. It's always going to be character building. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to have you. And I look forward to our next Yap session. Thanks, Claire. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. You can go back to moisturizing now. Oh my God.